right, guys, welcome to the first episode of the Jake Shields podcast on Tarps Off Sports. Jake, what's going on, man? Good to see you. How's things?
Hey, man, been really good. Just got back from the gym, training some of my fighters, recently relocated to Vegas. I was kind of out of the MMA world for a while, so it's nice to be around fighters and training people and, started watching the fights again a few months ago. So my knowledge isn't completely up on it, but I decided it'd be a good idea to start a podcast to keep me involved in the sport and start analyzing fights.
Yeah, man, analyzing fights. It's a good way to stay engaged with the fans. That's what we try to do here, be an interactive sports site. And you know what? I think you as a fighter would get this more than anybody. I think the MMA media needs a guy like you in it, a little more from the fighter's perspective, a little more in touch with the fans. You see some of the stuff that goes out there nowadays, probably more than when you were even fighting. I mean, that must bother you as a fighter, no? The way that some of these media guys treat the fighters.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the media guys have always been a little out of touch, but I think now they're like just so out of touch, with things like how they're trying to stop the fights from happening with COVID when all the fans and all the fighters wanted it. You see them mad about live crowds and you see them like ragging on fighters over their politics. Like, who cares? I'm not going to rag on someone. I don't care if you're left or right, but you see them like ragging on anyone that's like right leaning, just all kinds of weird stuff. Another thing, journalists, you see them. One thing I always laugh about. Anytime there's a brawl, the journalists completely freak out and call it the worst thing ever, and all the fans absolutely love it. So you just see like things like that show you how disconnected they are. Like I saw a poster today, it was like the most shameful moment in MMA history, and it showed me and with the Mayhem brawl with Nick Diaz, and some journalists calling it the most shameful event in history. The amount of times fans come up to me and they're like, "That was so awesome." It's like that. Yeah, maybe it wasn't great we got in a fight, but that was definitely not the most shameful event in MMA history.
No, it certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't. And believe me, we're going to obviously have to break that whole Mayhem Miller brawl down at some point because, like you said, that was a pivotal thing. I saw you tweet out after they put that out, too. You said it was the best 20 grand you ever spent. Now, I imagine you've bought some cool stuff in your day. Does that still stand?
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, at the fine, it wasn't that big, 20 grand. It was well worth it to spend 20 grand for that fight. Like, it wasn't I just tweeted out because someone called it a shameful thing, and I'm like, that was kind of my rebuttal. Like, yeah, it wasn't that bad, Maybe it wasn't really the best 20 grand ever spent, but it was. I want to take it back. It sucks. No, maybe that hurt Strikeforce a little bit. I'm sorry about that to Scott Coker, but as far as beating up Mayhem, he deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He did. And Coker's okay. They got Bellator now. They're on Showtime. He's printing money again. He'll be fine. But I want to go back. You said about the fans being there. It was awesome seeing the fans at the Masvidal and Usman fight. Usman ends up knocking him out in devastating fashion. Dana White comes out and says, you know what? Colby Covington's the next guy. So it sounds like we're going to get that Usman Covington 2 fight. It was a great fight. Usman got the better of him. Colby's called a couple of fouls. He claims that the ref was politically motivated against him. I think that goes with the shtick. But the question people are wondering now, Usman calls out Chiesa here. Is Usman running from Colby Covington, or is he just trying to set up better fights?
I don't know. I don't think he's running from anyone. He's a tough dude. I wouldn't say he's running, but maybe in his mind he thinks Chiesa is a slightly easier fight. I don't know if he is or isn't, because that Colby fight was really close. That was the best fight I've seen him in. So I personally want to see that rematch. That would be my pick. But Michael Chiesa is on a great tear. He's been looking amazing as well. So I see a good argument for him as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Wonder Boy Thompson, you've been in that mix before. I think he's the only guy inside the top 5 Usman hasn't given the fight to. But you just said maybe it's an easier fight. We've heard a lot of talk about Usman's legacy and that he wants to preserve that. Does that go into it being a fighter? I don't understand it. Like when you have that kind of run, you went on a huge run and you were just, it seemed like at the time from what I remember, I mean, you weren't in the UFC doing it, but I think you beat 5 or 6 UFC champions on that run. You weren't picking the easiest guys, right? So, I mean, do you think that Colby is the fight that he should take? Like, is Colby the number 1 contender at 170 for you? Or
it's honestly a close one. I can see an argument for Chiesa or Colby. I personally like to see Colby because that first one was such a good fight, but I mean, I wouldn't argue the other way. I think the way Usman probably sees it is he already beat him. Sometimes you've already beat someone and it's like you're trying to beat new people. So I understand his perspective. I don't think he's running. I think he just wants a new fight, and that's more interesting to him. But I think the Colby fight might sell a little bit better. He's obnoxious. He talks a lot of crap. It's just, to me, it seems a little more entertaining, and I really did enjoy the first fight.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's always going to be a good pre-fight when Colby Covington's in it, whether you like the shtick or you don't like the shtick. At the end of the day, it's the way of the world right now. But you talk about Kamaru Usman, everything he's accomplished at the welterweight division. His crowd and his fans and even Dana White are going as far as to call him the greatest welterweight of all time. Jake, is Kamaru Usman the greatest welterweight of all time? Because I have my opinion on that, but we're going to obviously go to you, the pro, first.
Yeah, these debates are hard to say, but in my opinion, I would not give him that. He's looked amazing, and he could be on the track to be considered the greatest of all time. But for me, I look at how great you're doing and also longevity. He's looked amazing. He's on a good streak, but I think his older opponents weren't like the best until more recently. So right now he's on a crazy streak, looking great. But GSP held that streak for a long time. And I think anytime when you're talking to the greatest of all time, to me, you got to have like a 7-8 year stretch where you're winning. You can have like a 2-3 year stretch, but the longevity isn't there. It's hard for me to call you the greatest of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. George St. Pierre. You take a look at the list of fighters he went through in his career. Had a couple losses, avenged both of them in his career as well. Listen, Kamaru Usman is on the track to being right in that conversation. If he beats Colby again, Chiesa, and then who even knows what could happen with that Leon and Nate.
Nate. I would love to see Nate come and fight him. Wonder Boy, if he beats Wonder Boy's fighting Gilbert Burns. Yeah, Nate would be amazing. Him being obviously one of my best friends, that would be a great fight.
Well, yeah, if he beats Edwards, you got to think he's got to go right into that conversation because you know how, obviously you know better than anyone, but from the media perspective that I understand, like Dana knows what the Diaz's are worth in MMA, and the money fights are the money fights in the UFC. That's how it gets the camaraderie, right?
Yeah, Dana doesn't act like Nate and always says he doesn't sell, but Nate is a mega star. Like I know all these top fighters, and when I'm around Nate nowadays, it's like he gets mobbed the way Chuck Liddell used to when he first crossed over to the mainstream. Like you can, even when he visited me in New York, like celebrities walk around New York and get ignored, but when I was walking around with Nate, we were just getting lines of people coming up, and I'm walking around with like Cuba Gooding Jr. No one really pays attention, but you walk around with Nate and people just like mob up, and you're like, wow, this guy's almost like an A-lister now.
Yeah, man, exactly. And you know what? Like we were saying, he's a huge star. Just like we were saying with GSP in my country, he can't go anywhere. He gets mobbed everywhere he goes. Back to that greatest of all time conversation. I think it is George St. Pierre. Now, we had a little bit of a reunion this week.
There is an energy like never seen or heard before in UFC history.
We talked about it first. We had spoken together on Saturday about starting the podcast, and I turn on the TSN here in Canada, which has the MMA rights. It's like Canada's ESPN, and it turns out it was the 10-year anniversary of your fight versus George St. Pierre at UFC 129, the biggest event in North American history as far as MMA. What I know, the result obviously wasn't what you wanted it to be, but just being a part of that, it was the first sanctioned fight in Ontario. Like I will never forget the buzz. It was on channels my mom used to watch, like breakfast television, and they were talking about it on there. Like I knew when they were talking about it on the morning mom TV shows, it was going to be a huge event. Just being a part of that, 55,000 people. I think they did over 12 million at the gate. Like that was, I don't even think the number's been touched since. Kind of take us through that night, that fight, and the experience of, fighting one of the greatest of all time and taking them right down to the wire.
Yeah, like you said, you were in Canada, so you get it. But unless you were a part of that or up there, it was like absolutely unreal. It was like being in the Super Bowl. It was like I'd been in some big fights before, but going to that, it was just like wow. It was like just the whole Toronto and that area was just a buzz. Like it was not only was it sold out with the 55,000 tickets, like every bar was showing it. People couldn't get in bars. Everywhere you went, I couldn't. It was like I said, Nick Diaz. Now I couldn't walk around the streets, so I was getting mobbed. My cornermen were getting like mobbed for pictures. It was like, what is going on? It was just the whole buzz and the energy. And I gotta say, Canadian fans are amazing. I was treated so good. Everyone might have booed me a little bit, but they were like, they're always like personally, they come in your face. They're polite. They'll ask for a picture. They're not going to, I hope you get your ass kicked. They're the exact opposite of the Irish fans. No offense. It was just amazing, the whole experience. And even though I lost, it was a close fight. I took the last 2 rounds, and it was just to go there and fight and just walking out, looking at that crowd, being like, oh my God. I mean, the regular UFC is like, what, 15,000 people? And now you're looking at 55,000, and just the electricity in the room, the loudness, and then going out there, looking across at GSP, you know, who I think the greatest of all time. You're just like, wow, this is an unreal moment. And, you know, I almost pulled it off. I think maybe if I'd have pushed a little harder, a little earlier, I might have pulled it off, a fight that close. And, but, you know, GSP has always been one of my favorite fighters. He's a guy I actually became a personal friend with after we fought. So I have tremendous respect for him. And it was just great. We got to make history together.
Yeah, man, exactly. It's one of those things where the result at the end of an event that big almost becomes the last thing you worry about when you look at the experience and all the stories you have. And it's great to hear as like a Canadian guy. Every time I've talked to anyone, luckily so far, they always say Canada fight fans are insane. I know Dana thinks that too, because when they did the Conor and Floyd Mayweather, they were doing the press conferences. They did like New York City, LA, and they made sure they stopped in Toronto as one of the stops. So I think your guys' fight kind of put the Toronto fight scene on the map too, on like a big scale, where an event like that would come to Toronto. So again, to be involved with something like that, what was it like leading up to training? Who did you train with going into the George St. Pierre fight? Who were your partners, and what were you kind of looking to work on? I'm guessing you're wrestling. So I mean, what do you even work on when you're fighting George?
I didn't really change my training that much. I asked Tarek Azim, who trained me through most of my career. You know, he kind of became my coach by accident. We were training partners, and I didn't have a lot of coaching. I mean, I had Caesar originally, of course, but then we weren't going to his gym as much, and he's busy doing so many things. So he was my original jiu-jitsu coach. But then later in my career, I was kind of coaching myself. So Tarek started helping me, and then we always just used our own teammates as coaches, like Gil Melendez. I was Gil Melendez's original coach, and I'm the one that brought him up. But he would also, after I got him good, he started helping coach me as well. And then I wouldn't say Nick and Nate helped coach me, but we would meet up like 2-3 times a week for sparring partners. We'd give each other tips. We would train hard, but we tried to help each other. We tried to see what we were doing. So we kind of brought each other up together, which is kind of amazing. There's not really any other teams I've seen like that kind of came up, and we were brothers. We would never fight each other. Like, I remember a time someone asked Nick Diaz if he would like fight me or something, and he got like mad and like told the journalist to fuck off or something. And just, like, not, you know, he was like insulted that he was even asked that question, because like we're brothers. We all grew up young, poor street kids together, and then we all just kind of rose up. So it was it's rare when you see that with kids. You know, we literally barely had money to eat, and the next thing you know, we're out there winning world titles. So those guys are like family to me, and they always
man. And you go through. At what age did you start going to the classes? I mean, it hasn't been since you guys were like in like grade school kind of thing, or high school? When did that all start?
I actually started training with Chuck Liddell in San Luis Obispo at like 21. I met him, seen, you know, goofy looking dude with a mohawk, and I thought I was unbeatable. So went in trying to beat him up and just got my ass handed to me. So then I'm like, oh man, I'm going to follow and do whatever this guy says. I didn't expect him to kick my ass. So after that, I trained with him for like 2 years. And then I moved up to San Francisco for wrestling. And that's when I started going to Caesars. I think right around the same time, I was like 21. That's right when Nick started going. He was probably like 18. So we went there, I think maybe within like a few days or a week of each other. So we were kind of the two new guys. We were kind of the new guys that were both good, but we got along. So we weren't the best guys in the gym, but we were like good. So we were competitive. So we kind of pushed each other up, competing against each other, but like in a friendly way. We didn't want each other to pass each other up. So that helped tremendously. And then I was going to college with Gil Melendez, who was my party buddy, and I dragged him into the gym one day to train with me. And then Nick saw that, and he's just like, what's this? Jake's got someone. So he went the next day and brought his brother back. Goes, oh, you got to train with this guy that Jake's brought in. You got to beat him up. So he's trying to get his brother to beat up Gil. I'm trying to get Gil to beat up Nate. And it just kind of accelerated us together, having that competitive friendship that would push each other.
Yeah, and then you turn into a scrap pack, and you guys are a legendary team in the mixed martial arts, probably one of the most legendary team of all time. That's incredible. And you were saying you and George are personal friends now. I saw something with St. Pierre, speaking of Nick, and he said that the only guy he's ever fought that he doesn't have a relationship with or has never mended the bridge with is Nick Diaz, and Nick Diaz still hates him. Is that true?
I mean, I have not talked to Nick about it. I don't, you know. I know like the first time I hung out with George, I think Nick was too happy, but then after that, he's kind of like, whatever, because Nick hung out with AJ, who I wasn't. We used to be hardcore, but I don't hang out with those guys. But we got a little older, and it's kind of like, you know, we got to do our own thing. So I don't think Nick loves the fact that I'm friends with George, but I think they'll be cool one day. I think Nick respects him. There's no way. There's no way Nick doesn't respect George. Is all I got to say. And obviously George respects Nick. So I think one day they'll be friends and hang out.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think Nick's the kind of guy who keeps himself in battle mode all the time. So maybe he thinks that George is maybe a potential opponent for this comeback, which would be cool to see them run it.
That would be
run it back.
That would be a fight. Who wouldn't want to watch? They're both a little bit older. They both been around forever. I mean, who wouldn't tune in to watch that again?
Absolutely, man. You got to have balls to step into the cage with any one of those guys. Speaking of balls, guys, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the #1 tool in men's grooming. It is trusted by 2 million men worldwide. The Manscaped 3.0 is a fantastic product, guys, and we have a good offer for you. If you use promo code Jake AJJ, all capitals Jake AJJ, you'll get 20% off and free shipping on your product. That's Jake AJJ at manscaped.com. Promo code Jake AJJ, 20% off and free shipping. Now, I want to go back here, Jake, and there's an unfortunate part of this sport, and we've seen it, and it was kind of weird how it ended up going down at the last UFC event. You see what happened here. It's going to be on the screen with Chris Weidman and what happened to his leg. And the craziest part about that is Anderson Silva snapped his leg like that versus Chris Weidman. Weidman has a fight, kicks Uriah Hall. And you know, first off, what did you make of that injury? Do you think that's all she wrote for Chris Weidman? Is that the kind of injury that'll finish a man? And then I also want to ask you about Uriah Hall, but first answer that, then we'll get into the Uriah Hall part.
I mean, I don't want to say he's finished. That's going to be Weidman's choice. So, I mean, I like the guy. I know him personally. Don't know him well, but know him a little bit. So I'm not going to go and say he's finished. That's going to be a choice he's going to have to make. But it's going to be a tough recovery. He's not that young anymore. I think he's like 36. He's had kind of a rough on and off last part of his career. He's been fighting top guys and losing like close decisions, but he's already had kind of a tough patch. And to have such a devastating break, it's tough. He's going to have to like look and be like, do I really want to fight? He's got a wife. He's got kids. He's got, I don't know if he has gym ownership or what else, what kind of business stuff he has going. I'm not sure his financial situation, if he needs the money or not. But if he doesn't need the money, it's going to be tough for him to want to come back and fight.
Yeah. And I mean, legendary, he had the first win in UFC, for Uriah Hall. It sucks to fight a guy with a great history like Weidman, and you have a guy kick you and his leg snaps like that. If you're Uriah Hall, like as a fighter, I don't know, did you ever have anyone get any bad injuries fighting you? And what does that do for you mentally? Because I know if that was me, Chris, the not professional fighter, and someone snapped their leg like that on me, I would be messed up for a few days, I think.
I actually saw Uriah Hall like 2 days ago. He's fine. We know what we're getting into if we get in this. Like, I could get hurt, I could hurt my opponent. Like, did he want to hurt him? Of course he didn't, but he also knows it's part of the game. Chris made the mistake of coming in and throwing a huge shin kick with no setup. I mean, we've been seeing how effective those shin kicks have been lately in MMA. So everyone's starting to be shin kick. And I think Uriah Hall just might have made people think a little bit twice for throwing those shin kicks. He showed instead of lifting up the block, he just planted his leg, leaned forwards, and checked it. And like I asked Uriah, I'm like, did you feel it snap when he kicked? And he goes, no, but I heard it. I'm like, oh man. That's right. I'm like, oh, you didn't go down and hit him. He's like, I heard it snap. So it's like I didn't need to like follow up on a punch. I'm like, oh man.
Damn, yeah.
Can you imagine you hear something snap right as it kicks? It's like I said, I mean, obviously I don't think he was like stoked for the situation, but it wasn't like it was kind of a fluke, but it wasn't. It was also a really perfectly blocked kick. And that just shows you people with those shin kicks are going to have to make sure they're setting them up properly.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting, right? And that's why this show is going to give us a competitive advantage, because when you look at that to the common fighter or so the common fan, you think, yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation. But when you do, I guess, look back and see him plant that forward foot in, that is a great defense tactic. Like you said, checking the kick there, and it ended up breaking it. It is in a way like his totally defense random. Set it up, right? It wasn't random.
No, it wasn't totally random. Right. Uriah Hall knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't expect that break, but he knew if he planted his foot and leaned forwards that it would hurt the guy's foot, because your shin is planted, his is up, so it's like swinging versus a planted, so it's almost like you're kicking a rod.
Yeah, and that's what it looked like happened.
If he would have pulled his foot up to block, they would have been even, and they both would have. It wouldn't have broke, and they both would have hurt. But obviously, most of the time it happens, the shin's not going to snap, but it just shows that can't happen.
Yeah, either way,
we do that a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Either way, gotta wish Chris Weidman all the best after something like that. It is eerie how it happened to him with Anderson Silva, and then for it just to come back around and happen. I don't like when that shit happens. I'm superstitious, though. I don't like that at all. But let's go back.
Really strange. I think someone said that's only happened 3 times in the UFC, and 2 of them are in Weidman fights. But at least he wasn't on the receiving end of both of them. But that's just so bizarre.
Yeah, it is super bizarre, man. It's super bizarre. So we had Dominic Reyes lose his 3rd straight fight at UFC Vegas 25. One of your training partners there, Sean Strickland, he got a win. What should UFC fans look forward to seeing more from him in that? I know he's a little bit of an older guy, but I mean, he had a good win there. Like, he should be getting a nice fight next.
Like I said, I haven't been closely following UFC, so I actually had no idea who Strickland was till I came to Vegas for training. And the guy's a complete animal, complete lunatic. He wants to spar 5 days a week, and when he's sparring, he'll be like in your face talking crap. But he's a difficult guy. I like him, but he's one of those guys. He's a hard guy to like for some people because he's always abrasive, in your face, like wants to go hard all the time. But he's really talented. I think sometimes he doesn't even show some of his skills in his fight because he likes to come forwards and trade. But his grappling's actually you wouldn't realize it, but he had highly technical grappling too. Good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. He's one of those guys that kind of impressed me out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, this guy's got a future. I think if he could make some small changes, he could become a champion. I think he does need to make a few small changes, a few adjustments. Maybe not only spar, but I think the guy, in my opinion, he's already definitely top 10 and could easily cross to that top 5 in the next year.
Yeah, it certainly could. Going back to Dominic Reyes, though, he's now lost to John Jones. I think he lost to Chris Weidman, and then he lost to Fujaka there.
I think he beat Chris Weidman.
Oh, did he beat Chris Weidman?
I could be wrong. I think he knocked Chris Weidman out. I think that's where he got. I could be off though.
I think he beat Chris Weidman. I first round knockout. Yeah, it was. Thank producer Jack in the background confirmed it. He did. He actually knocked out Weidman. I think that was kind of.
That was actually the first time I met the guy out. Didn't know who he was. He came up to me, talked to me. Then I looked him up and watched him beat Weidman. I'm like, oh wow, this guy's legit. So.
Yeah. No. Exactly. And to see, now he's down 3 times here. It's like, I don't know. We'll see what happens with the rest of his career going forward.
It's to be like 0-3, but against like the 3 best, John Jones, arguably the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
The champ, and this other guy that just came out looked like a phenom. So it's a tough, unforgiving sport. You can be in the top of the world to all of a sudden 0-3. That was a similar thing that Weidman had. He was, he was fighting all the best and losing these close fights. It's a brutal sport.
Yeah, and during the coronavirus pandemic, it's like the UFC seems pretty quick to push the button on the cut list here. I'm sure they kept the sport going and it was great, but when you don't have the gate for as long as they did and having to build Fight Island, you saw a lot of cuts happen. When you lose 3 fights in a row in any promotion, I imagine as a fighter you're nervous no matter who you lost to.
Yeah, in the UFC, they also like to cut guys that are getting paid well, and anyone like Dominic Reyes is getting paid well. But I couldn't see him cutting right now. It would be ridiculous to cut him now, coming off main events and they definitely got to give him one more shot because the guys he beat are top notch. Lost to.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of top-notch guys, One Championship had their One on TNT series all through April, and Eddie Alvarez was the star of 2 of them. He had a no contest and then got beat by a kid who fought him a week after winning the right and taking out the number 5 guy in the division to even fight Alvarez, and Askren. He ends up getting beat pretty handedly by him. He was trying to do the hat trick like Ben Askren tried to do to get the UFC belt. He's been a UFC champion, a Bellator champion. It looks like he's not going to win the One Championship here. Now, there was some talk about him boxing Oscar De La Hoya, and he was really interested in it until he saw the event, which was the Jake Paul fight that went down against Ben Askren. And then he was like, I'm just focused on the championship. I'm not down for that. If you were a guy like Eddie Alvarez and you see all the disrespect that goes around between these, I don't even really feel comfortable calling Jake Paul a boxer yet. He's a kid who trains boxing. He's never fought a boxer yet, though, for some reason, but I have a hard time with that. But would you like to see a vet like Eddie go in there and maybe take on an Oscar De La Hoya, who, is a great boxer, no doubt, but a big voice in MMA? We put together that Chuck versus Tito fight, which I think most people would agree was kind of bullshit too. Like, I know Dana doesn't like him and he's had all his problems and that, but would you like to see Eddie go in there and put on for the MMA people and go drop one of these boxers? Because I mean, De La Hoya is old now, and he's I think he parties harder than Keith Richards, that guy. So I think that's actually a winnable fight for Eddie.
Yeah, I didn't see the show, but everyone kept talking about how coked out Oscar was, and I think after seeing those pictures of Oscar dressed a little funny, I knew as soon as I saw those pictures, I'm like, oh, this guy's got a coke problem. You ain't doing this. You ain't doing this if you're sober. You're doing a little too much coke if you think it's a good idea to dress up with a stripper in her outfit. But that was like, oh, poor guy. But
he's off the rails, that guy.
Yeah, I would love to see Oscar versus Eddie, just because. Obviously, Oscar was an amazing boxer in his prime. It would beat Eddie in his prime, but like, he's way past his prime. But I'm sure he can still box. Eddie's a guy. He's a really good boxer. I think he's a little past his prime as well, but he's not near as far past as Oscar. And it'd be a great way to get on payday. It'd be an interesting fight. I don't know who would win, and it'd be I would tune in to watch it. Like, I'm not necessarily against these stupid fights. Even Jake Paul, I got to give him a little credit. Yeah, he's obnoxious. He doesn't deserve all the hype, but he was already famous. He was already rich, already had countless girls, and then he decided to fight. And not only does he do it, from what I hear, he takes it really, really serious. I guess he spars all the time, does the road work, the bag work. Obviously has the money to hire top-notch trainers, so he's not just going in there fighting. He actually is training like a real pro. He hasn't done.
And Ben learned that the hard way, right?
Yeah, and it's like, so I mean, at least the guy's going out there and giving it his all. He doesn't have to. He could be rich and famous without it, and he's got the nerve to go out there and box. So even though he's unlikable, I got to give the guy a little bit of credit, and he's got not natural power. You can't say he can't box. Will he be a world champion? No, but he can knock guys out. I would like to see him step up and fight someone who can like actually fight. Maybe Nick and Nate can get a good payday beating him up.
Yeah, I would love to see Nate get in there and teach him a thing or two about boxing and fight a guy who actually knows how to throw his hands. I felt bad for Askren. He was never known for fighting. The only punches he ever threw in his life were to set up takedowns. You see him coming off a huge hip surgery. He needed to go up like 20 pounds. Clearly didn't take it seriously, didn't do it the most healthy way. I mean, wrestling bodies, you know how that is anyway with guys you train with. Like, sometimes like it doesn't always, aesthetically look the best.
But he looked out of shape, right? Though. But you don't always look the best shape. Like guys like Fedor.
He looked out, but he was like 20 pounds on top of that. Yeah,
Fedor
he was
has
20 pounds on
fat on him, but you can still see explosive muscle underneath it and stuff. Like Askren just looked like he hadn't been training. It's like, again, I like Askren, but it just sucks to see a guy not taking it serious and go out there and get knocked out. But hey, probably made $1 million and he's like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, man, exactly. And you got Jake Paul. You see the cage side drama with Daniel Cormier. What do you think about that? I mean, Jake Paul, I get it. Like Ben Askren, guys like that, that makes sense. DC, for him to talk smack to such a legend like that, what did you make of DC going over there and just letting them know, like, it's not a game. I'm not just going to box you, man. If you want to fight me, like, I'm going to fucking kill you is essentially what he's saying.
Yeah, DC would destroy him. Straight boxing, too, he's had no chance against DC. He's bigger. Jake Paul's been fighting smaller opponents, and DC is actually bigger, can box. He would knock him out for sure, but I don't think he has any interest in doing a boxing match with Paul. But if he did, that would – I don't think Paul would do that. Giving up the weight and DC's power, like, he can actually – he would put him out.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think so too. I think it's going to be Tyron Woodley who ends up being the next MMA guy goated over there, just released from the UFC out of his contract. They had that shit talking in the locker room. Who was it? Jay Leon Love, I think, is the professional boxer guy who kind of works with Jake Paul. I think he's also a cheerleader too. Like, I think that's like, just like, I think he's legitimately just there to like pump up the fact that Jake's a great boxer. Yeah. I think the Paul has so much money that those guys just get paid to say that stuff. That's why I was worried going into that Askren fight. I'm like, shit, this kid already, like you said, has all this money, has all this pull and power with these companies like Triller that are putting on, you know, that not only did that boxing match have fighters, I mean, it had Justin Bieber and all these huge, like, I mean, the amount of money that must have went into that production is sickening, and they're all doing that because they know that kid's gonna pull dollars, right? So
yeah, man, I don't know what he's getting paid, but I guarantee you it's in the millions, you know, probably
millions.
Yeah, probably at least 20 million he made for that fight, if not more. So it's crazy, but you know, like I said, I don't really know the guy personally. He seems like a prick, but good for him. He's hustling, he's training, he's getting paid. I'm not gonna hate on someone that's got the balls to go out there and take real fights. And if he steps up and fights someone like Woodley, then that's a real fight.
Yeah, it certainly is. It is, man. And like you said, the one thing I'll give the credit to the kid for too is like he believes in himself 110%. Like he believes it. Like it's crazy to see. And it sounds like from everything that you've talked to people in the industry and then just like hearing other fighters and that, like you said, it sounds like he's putting in the work. And speaking of putting in the work, we've seen all the pictures. We brought it up a little bit with you. Nick Diaz was at the event at the Usman Masvidal fight. You know, he's put out some photos recently. Looked like he was training with his shirt off. Absolutely looks ready to fight tomorrow. He hasn't fought since 2015. The Nick is coming back chirps always happen. It always gets planted. There's always these talks. We saw Nate come back. He's fighting Leon next month, in a couple weeks here, this late in the middle of this month. I think they let that fight settle the dust first. But is Nick coming back this time? Do you think?
I mean, only Nick's the one that knows that. Even though Nick's one of my best friends, he's a difficult guy to deal with. You never know. He keeps a little secret of what he's doing. But I know he's training again. I think he wants to. And from what I hear, he looks great in training. Nick's one of those weird guys that can like disappear for like 3 months. You think he's been partying in Vegas and he comes in and all the guys that he beat up for years look at him like, oh, I'm going to get Nick today. And then he comes on the mat and just like mops everyone up still. And they're just like, what the hell happened? But he's a one of a kind, you know. I remember being out like all night with him, you know, like we're like out at the clubs and he's like, oh, I gotta go do a triathlon, and like leaves from clubbing to go do a triathlon. I'm like, this guy is like not a normal human. Before one of his fights, he went and did an Ironman like a couple weeks before, which the Ironman's like the 26-mile run, I don't know how many mile bike, swim. Like Nick's a specimen. He's mentally tough, and he's been away from a while, so of course it's going to be tough. But if anyone can come back and look amazing, it's Nick, and I think he's serious about doing it. I mean, he wouldn't be at the UFC if he wasn't talking to Dana. It's a matter of Dana is willing to pay him. He'll definitely do it. He just wants to get paid. He knows his worth. He doesn't want to fight for nothing. So it's up to Dana really to make that happen.
Yeah, I was watching the post-fight press conference, and they asked him about Nick, and he's like, yeah, he's here. He wants a fight. And they're like, are you going to give him one? And he was like, sure. Like, he just kind of brushed it off. He knew he was coming to get the talk. Like, I'll fight if you give me the money, right? Which is like, it's deserved. You know, you guys all pioneered this sport, right? If you can hop in there, it better be a good matchup. Now, speaking of the matchup, we look at guys that Nick could potentially fight. I think Jorge Masvidal makes a ton of sense. Avenge the close loss that Nate had against him. And they got that bad motherfucker belt too that I think would look good on Nick's arm. I don't like that belt now, but if it went on Nick's arm, I think I'd like it.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. If I pick one fight, I'd say Masvidal. They're both OGs. They both came up street fighting, you know, like Nick in the streets of Stockton, Masvidal on the streets of Florida. They're both hardcore guys. They're both fan favorites. They're both Masvidal's the top, but it's coming off a loss. Nick hasn't fought in 5 years. There's the brother story. I don't think Nick really wants to doesn't really like the story of my brother. He wants to be about him, not that. But that is that is a selling point, you know, to revenge his brother. And Nick's I think Nick would win the fight. Not easy. I mean, Masvidal's tough, but it's a good style matchup. They're probably going to bang and beat each other up, and I don't see how the fans don't win with that fight. If I was a UFC matchmaker, I would be calling them, trying to make that, and I'd be paying whenever they ask, you know, within reason. But I know Nick's reasonable. I just know for some reason Dana doesn't like to pay Nick and Nate. He doesn't want to admit they're the stars they are.
Yeah. What is there a reason for that? Is that because of the Strikeforce stuff back in the day? Like it took you guys kind of a while to migrate over there. What's the deal with that?
I think they just won't kiss his ass. They're real with him. They'll never suck up to him. I mean, remember before Nate fought Conor, he was like in a 2-year break, or he jumped in and fight Anthony Johnson, but he was on strike because Dana was paying him so bad he refused to fight. I remember I got in an argument with Dana one time in Vegas over it. He's sitting there yelling at me like saying Nate ain't worth anything. I'm trying to tell him he's a big star. I think him and Nate almost got into it. So for some reason he was just thinking Nate wasn't worth that much, but Nate went and proved him wrong. And I think in Dana's mind, he knows at this point they're stars. Like he knows it. He just doesn't want to. He's a stubborn guy. He doesn't want to admit he was wrong.
Yeah. Dana has that perception to him, right? And I think it's obviously, I mean, I don't think you get to where he is in business without being that type of guy too, being stubborn, bullheaded, set in your ways. I think that would obviously play a factor. But I mean, yeah, no, super wrong. If either like this Nate fight versus Leon Edwards, that's going to be massive. And that's in Texas, right? So that's going to be a great event there too, because that'll have sold out fans. That's going to be a huge draw. And Nick coming back and fight, especially Masvidal, you can put that title on the line, which gets all the hardcore.
They both grew up street fighting, so it makes sense. It's just they really are bad guys. You mean they both know that now because they're older, but they're both guys you would not have wanted to mess with 10, 15 years ago. I know Nick well. He's not a guy you wanted to come up and like start a fight with. I can tell you that.
No, I'm sure you've seen a lot of crazy shit on the streets of Stockton, which we got the Jake Shields podcast now. We can talk about all those crazy stories when they come up and whatever. We just buzz them. But yeah, man, I'm sure growing up in the environment, and I mean, I don't understand. I'm from Ontario, Canada. We basically just drink beer.
Everyone's so nice up there.
We're all just nice. We like to drink beer, and like occasionally, if you do get in a fist fight, it's like with one of your friends one night, and you guys end up fine. Like the next day, it's not that hardcore, right? Yeah. So I don't really get it. But
I think the worst thing I heard up there was can I get a picture, eh? Oh, I'm rooting for GSP, but I still like you.
Yeah.
Versus like the Irish fans, and they're like, "Oh, your boy's gonna get his ass kicked." It's just like so different.
But you know what? You get like a couple of glasses of whiskey and someone who's Irish watching a Conor McGregor fight, and all of a sudden they think they're Conor McGregor. I used to actually do some bouncing up here, worked so many UFC nights. No worse fan base in the world than the Irish and the Conor McGregor fans for being just aggressive on fight night. Even here in Canada.
I think I'm part Irish, but that's by far the worst fans. That's the only time I've like smacked a fan at the Nate fights. They'll come in your personal space and like talk crap and then act like it's cool. Maybe it's like a culture thing. Because I've had guys like talk crap about Nate and try to get a picture with me. I'm like, get away from me. Like push them away from me. And then they're trying to be like, why you do that? I want a picture. It's like you're sitting there, you're talking crap about like my brother, and you think I'm gonna take a picture with me. It's like, get the fuck away from me. That's not how it
that's not how it works.
It must be a different culture. Like they just talk shit and then like they're all cool. I don't know, but that's not how it's not how we fly.
No, certainly not. And it's like, was that like at the arena, or was that like leading up to it? So you said you smacked a fan. Like, I mean, you're not gonna get in any trouble for it. What happened?
Surprisingly, all of his friends made fun. I ended up 2 different guys I smacked. One was after the the second one, I was in a bad mood after he lost that close decision. And some guy comes up to me and be like, your boy got his ass kicked. And I turned around and just slapped him across his face. There was like 10 of them. So I thought I was about to get jumped. I turned around ready to fight. Like, oh crap. But then all of his boys just start clowning on him, being like, "Oh, you deserve that." So I'm like, "All right, cool." Like, then there's like cameras everywhere. So I'm like, "Man, I should have done that. I don't want to go to jail." But luckily, I was there and I bounced. And another dude in the elevator was talking crap. Your boy's gonna get his ass kicked. Then he grabs me and tries taking a picture, and I didn't push him. I slammed him into the elevator. I'm like, "Don't fucking take a picture with me. You're sitting there talking crap about Nate, and you're trying to take a picture with me." It's like, it's not. Like, if you're cool, if you don't talk crap about Nate, you can root for Conor, and I understand that. But if you're going to talk crap about him, we're not cool.
Yeah, I get why fans would like Conor McGregor. Yeah. He's a showman. He gets the crowd going. He creates a buzz. You know, no matter if you like him or don't like him personally, there's a hype that goes with him. But like for his fans to think that they could just come and take a picture, I'd smack that camera out of their head. Yeah.
Yeah, to think they can like talk crap to you. And I know there was like multiple fights between the Stockton guys and Irish, because it was all the same thing. Those guys just coming like yelling at Nate when he'd walk by, like throwing things at him. It's just complete disrespect. Everyone always talks about the Brazilian fans being so terrible, but I've been to Brazil and fought, and it's not like that. They will chant, "You will die," you know, so it sounds bad, but they get the personal space. They won't come up to you and start talking crap. They'll come up to you and be very polite. Again, I think it's a culture thing. I think in Brazil, if you come in someone's face and talk crap, the guy's probably going to hit you. But
yeah.
must be
I think
different
maybe in
Ireland.
Ireland, that's just how they get hypered up or something and all get in each other's faces. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a terrible idea. But I've seen it even, the behavior when Conor fights from the media when they ask questions and stuff. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's like you get some guy who's like one 100th Irish and, like you said, got one drink of whiskey, and they're Conor McGregor fighters. But I want to bring us into the last topic of the show here, just around MMA, what we have coming up this weekend. We have Bellator going down. That's going to be a good event. Bellator 258. You're cornering Patchy Mix in that. Why don't you let us know? You're actually heading out to go corner him tomorrow, no?
Yeah. Yep. Heading out tomorrow. Patchy Mix, the guy I've only trained for a couple months, but he's phenomenal 35-pounder. I think I'm gonna make him world champion. Well, I think he'd be a world champion without me. The guy's that good, but hopefully I'll make it easier. He already fought for the Bellator title recently, lost a close decision. He's went 12-0 as an amateur and 13-1 as a pro right now. He's just super talented. He's the kind of guy as a coach you want. Usually I'm trying to get guys to come meet me in the morning. He's calling me every morning, trying to get me to meet him for practice. He is the point where I'm like, oh God, I gotta go meet him again. But that's what you want as a coach, a guy that's bugging you to train, not you bugging him to train. And you show him something, he picks it up so quick. He's just his stand up, his grappling. He's a guy. If you don't know who he is, I would definitely watch him fight.
Yeah, 100%. And then, like you said, he lost to Archuleta, and Archuleta has been just on a tear himself. His only loss, I think he won like 18 straight fights, lost to Pitbull, and then won those two fights against Henry Corrales and then Patchy. But that was a very close fight. That was close as hell. And he's on the main event fighting Pettis.
It was Patchy's first 5-rounder. He had a lot of first-round finishes. So I think he didn't quite pace himself. He was winning early on and lost. And like I said, and it's now I'm coaching him. Hopefully that can help. I think the kid's got unlimited potential, because you see someone who's already that good, but he's only at like 60% of what he could be. It's not like he's already maxed out. That's why I'm looking at him being like, oh wow, this guy's gonna be great.
Yeah, definitely. And the cool thing, like you said, the unfortunate thing with Strikeforce, but the Bellator, the one thing I think is cool that they have the Grand Prix. Right now they have a light heavyweight Grand Prix, but Yoel Romero is actually off of that now. Rumble Johnson has a new opponent, so that'll be interesting to see. But are you a fan of the Grand Prix formats where you kind of have the champions starting it, and every fight through the Grand Prix, the belt's on the line every time until the end, and then there's a big fat paycheck and the belt at the end for you, right? I think it's $1 million in the belt.
Yeah, I love the Grand Prix. I think it's there's no politics. Whoever wins. It's just the best guy wins. It's great. It reminds me of the old Pride Grand Prix. I don't know what you were watching back then. They had those old Pride Grand Prix. They're amazing, and it's I love Bellator doing these, and it's a good payday. And that's the $1 million on top of their. It's $1 million, I believe, on top of what they're already getting paid. So some of these guys might be making like $2 million. Bellator pays really well. The UFC has the name recognition, but some of these guys in Bellator are making more money than the UFC. So it's Scott Coker's always been good with pay. He was always paying me great when I was in Strikeforce. So it's I love the fact there's another organization paying these guys well.
Yeah, man, exactly. It's nice to see. And then you got the one championship as well over on the east side of things, paying really good and having, these guys are coming over there. You saw Demetrius Johnson lose, Eddie Alvarez lose. They're having a tough time over there. They're displaying some great martial artists over there as well. Now, Chaudhry, the CEO of One Championship, actually was talking to producer Jack, who's in the background of our show here the other day, and he was like, he wants to do an East versus West, champion versus champion, or do like a divisional versus Grand Prix with the UFC. Would you like to see cross-promotional stuff? Do you think they are like an opportunity, like in hockey? All the best players in the world can go like play for their country or whatever. Would you like to see at least some sort of tournament that maybe puts like a Pitbull out there again? I mean, you got Michael Chandler fighting for the 155 title on the same card as Nate there at 262. And I mean, Pitbull destroyed Chandler in about a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think, Yeah, I think it'd be great if we found a way for shows to cross promote. Realistically, I don't think the UFC will do it because they have the name recognition. But like you said, UFC has a lot of the best fighters. They don't have all the best fighters, so it makes it so some of these guys might be getting paid better at other shows, but they're not getting the same name recognition. It's the same problem I went through. I was on this crazy win streak, beating, I think like I said, I beat 4 or 5 UFC champs on that, but I wasn't getting the same recognition because it's outside the UFC. So you kind of get forced to have to go over if you want to get the ultimate name recognition. And it would be great if, like boxing, they would cross over. I could see the other shows doing it, maybe like Bellator, PFL, ONE FC. That'd be great if they could cross their champs over at some point.
Start there,
that's a lot more realistic than UFC. And maybe we'd see it one day, but I would think it would be way off, maybe like 20 years or something. Because boxing is able to cross promote, and that's the way to get the real ultimate world champion. Because we don't always know. Everyone looks to the UFC as the ultimate world champion, and a lot of times that's the best guy in the world, but not always. Sometimes you see like you said, Demetrius Johnson losing. You see these other shows have really good fighters as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone like Pitbull has just been unbelievable in the run that he's on. He might go for 3 championships in Bellator here because he's already beat the bantamweight champion. So if he could just make that weight, he's already beat that guy before. He could go take his belt and try to go champ. But Jake, you got to get ready to corner. You got a whole ton of stuff to do today, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, ring the little bell down there, and catch us every Wednesday at 3 p.m. The Jake Shields podcast. Man, pretty good for the first time. I know we were both a little nervous. Good flow here.
This is our very first time trying to get the never done podcast, getting into it, but I think we had a good flow. I think we'll obviously keep getting better, and we'll be once we get the flow of it, we'll be bringing guests on as well, and it should be a show. Hopefully everyone keeps watching.
Hell yeah, man. It'll be a hell of a time. We'll have our mics and everything all set next time too. I don't even have my arm set up yet. It'll look a little more podcasty, but the content's what matters, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Jake, safe travels, man. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers, man.